Archit. I represent the personal portfolio project that I built in Flutter. So initially, this project was intended to be built in HTML CSS as given on the roadmap.sh, but I thought that it'd be a good way to learn about adaptive responsive design in Flutter, so I decided to recreate this in Flutter. So let me switch over to the application so that I can discuss it in more detail. So the main highlight of this project is indeed about learning the adaptive response design in Flutter. So So before I get started, I would like to point out that I decided to host this project on a custom domain that I bought. Initially, I was hosting this project on GitHub Pages, which is essentially a hosting service provided by GitHub to serve static websites. And initially, I was hosting on that, but I decided that it'd be a good experimentation to understand how we can integrate custom domains on our website. So I bought this domain name from name.com, and it was provided as a bug under the GitHub Student Developers Pack. So again, sorry for diverging from the topic. So again, the basic idea is that if I try to resize the window and roughly around 800 pixels, this will shift from the desktop layout to a mobile layout, and that is really the main and core feature that is the main thing I learned from here. This is that how can I achieve that? Now, apart from responsive design, the other two things that I implemented in this project is one, I added the theming. Now, right now it's in dark mode, but if you were to switch over to light mode through your device settings, it will adapt to that. I have hard coded it to respond to your device to the device setting. And then second, it's these external links that I added. So when I will click on this link, it will open up the URL to my profile across roadmap.sh and on GitHub. So it was done through URL launcher package, an infamous package in Flutter. So that was all from a high level perspective. But if I were to switch over to a technical deep dive in how I did things, and first and foremost, I'd like to point out that I have really documented it in extreme precise details of how or what I learned and what were the features, and even I added screenshots. So let me switch over to the IDE. So here I ended up creating two separate files for desktop and mobile. So I kind of divided each widget into, so one of the things or one of the design patterns that I learned even as a beginner is separation of concerns, that each widget should be uh, should have one core functionality or one should serve one purpose. That's the reason why, especially on mobile, as I saw when it converted into a list, that I separated out everything like lab bar, hero section, project block, and everything. And over here, I have the desktop version, which is more or less of the same. And here you can see on the top, where I'm pointing my arrow, that these are all the more or less of the same thing, or it's just the counterparts, such as the hero section, the project block, or project item. Now, what connects both of them is the main file, where using the layout builder, I was able to decide whether to shift between mobile or desktop. And uh, just to ensure, and I also ended up extracting the hard-coded values. For example, uh, the widgets or the strings that I thought was being repeated across both the layouts. I kind of extracted them out, which includes the title and some of uh, these are all for strings, and I ended up even extracting some of the widgets, such as in the app bar, if you can see, for example, so for example, in the app bar, these are some of things, for example, the app bar, even in both the layouts, it's more or less of these buttons are labels are more or less the same. So that's the first thing I did. And although I have kept this project fairly simple, just because it was a really good landing ground to learn about basics of adaptive response design in Flutter, and just another minor technical details that initially as you can see that the pointer changes to a click. That's when I ended up wrapping the button with a mouse pointer. Let me share that one. Mm, I think it's around here. Sorry, my apologies. I think it's definitely mm, project work. It is here. It's mouse region. The cursor changes to that of click, and that's the first thing I did. Albeit that the project is very big one, and I admit that it's really big one. But there were some hurdles as well, which I still think we can say these are the bugs. So as you can see that right now the app, like literally on the desktop version, I have a dedicated app bar widget even here in the desktop. I do have that app bar, but on mobile I had to uh, keep it as a child of the body of scaffold because when I wanted to get certain height, it was exceeding the app bar's default height. I could have hard coded some height for the app bar, but I thought it's best if because since I don't want to hard code the values as if I try to change the label tomorrow and maybe add something else and then it would literally break the application. So I thought that it's much better to make it as a children of the scaffold's body. And again, so this was more or less of the same project, but initially I was also able to, sorry, not initially, but I was also able to do some basic deployment on basic CI/CD pipeline, and I ended up creating this GitHub workflow. Let me show it one. Yes, here it is. So I did end up creating GitHub workflow for deployment on GitHub Actions, and initially, again, as stated that initially was hosting it on GitHub pages, but then I put it over to custom domain. So that was all for this project. And for I think the next scope or the next iteration of this project will be towards, I mean, I will keep on reiterating on this project because again, I really want to, for example, if you notice that all the details that are filled in the project or in the portfolio weren't actually that accurate. These were some placeholder things that I added. I will reiterate on this project and will definitely keep it active and actually make it much more accurate to well as a real person portfolio project. So that's all. That's all it from my side. Have a nice day.